Welcome to the Christian Romance Podcast, where we go behind the books with inspiring Christian romance authors, exploring faith, love, and the journey that brings the story to life. I'm your host, Kelly Jo Wilson, and today we're chatting with Lynn H. Blackburn. Lynn is the award-winning author of Never Fall Again, along with the Dive Team Investigations and Defend and Protect series. She writes swoon-worthy Southern suspense inspired by her childhood dream of becoming a spy, though she freely admits she probably would have been caught on her first mission. These days, she lives out her adventures through her characters while riding in comfy clothes at home in Simpsonville, South Carolina, where she lives with her husband, Brian, and their 3 children. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode so you can hear more about our newest book giveaway for this month. Now, here's my conversation with Lynn. Hi, Lynn. Thank you so much for being on the Christian Romance Podcast today. I'm so happy to have you here. I just love chatting with you already.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this. This will be great.
Yes. Why don't you share a little bit first before we talk about your awesome new book? Share a little bit about your journey, like what your writing journey looked like, what your faith looked like within that journey, how God kind of called you into it, and how you got to writing these awesome suspense stories, because you have nailed it. You nailed the suspense. So just let our listeners know just a little more about you in that way.
Yeah. So I am not one of those writers who started out as a writer. You hear the people talk about, I've been writing stories since I was 3 or whatever. I wrote my first novel in kindergarten, and that is not me at all. I was a reader, 100% a reader all the way, to the point that when I got my driving permit, my mother, I've told this story before, my mother said, okay, drive home. We lived in a small town. And I just looked at her and said, how? Where do I go? And she's like, what do you mean you don't know how to get home from here? And it was because I never went anywhere without a book. And I didn't know how to get anywhere. I had no clue. She banned me from reading in the car that summer until I learned my way around town. It was awful. So I was all about reading. And I was in my 30s. I actually have a degree in chemical engineering from Clemson because that's an obvious path to writing, and which is hilarious to me. And I think the Lord is just a hoot about it, because I have friends now with their college age kids, and I just kind of laugh because I'm like, look, you follow the path God puts in front of you, and we have this idea that it's going to be like that forever. Like, this is where we're going forever, and if we go in a different direction, somehow we've missed it. I don't see that. I think God has such a much more varied plan for us than we can possibly imagine when we're 18, 19, 20 years old.
For sure.
And I have no regrets about engineering and school and working as an engineer. But also then I have no plans to ever go back to it, because I'm very happy doing what I'm doing now. But yeah, I was still a reader. I didn't read as much in college for obvious reasons, because I was too busy with school. But then when I got older and I had my children, and I was just like, always still had these stories in my head. And I do talk about it in my bio that I wanted to be a spy. That was my dream. And along with that, I would argue, and this maybe will age me a little bit, but I think a lot of this may have originally come from Scarecrow and Mrs. King. If you never saw Scarecrow Mrs. King, the idea Scarecrow was an agent. It was a TV show. It came on. This would be around, oh goodness, I guess this was in the 80s probably. This would be around the time like A-Team and Knight Rider.
Oh, yeah,
those kind of shows were on. And Scarecrow was a secret undercover agent.
Oh, that's so fun.
And Mrs. King was a divorced housewife with 2 kids doing her thing. And somehow she got wrapped into this world where suddenly she's like an accidental spy. And I think that may have been part of it, as far as like the genesis story of how I wanted to be a spy. And my parents would send me to bed. I wasn't tired. I'm a night owl by nature. And I would just lay there, and I couldn't read because, I was a very compliant child. So I didn't have the flashlight typically, reading anyway. And so I would just make up stories in my head. And of course, I was always the heroine. of these stories. And as I got older, I would be like, okay, so I'm going to speak like 100 languages, and I'm going to have all these martial arts skills, and I'm going to be a crack shot. I'm going to be fluent with all these weapons and all of this stuff. And no one will ever see it coming.
You'll be an unsuspecting spy.
I listen, I am the biggest chicken in real life. The biggest. I have been known to like run up the stairs from the basement because there might be something down
Oh
there.
my gosh, girl, there's
I
something
just
down there. I do the same
there's
thing.
something down there, right? I am the world. I can shoot. I like to shoot. I'm not a bad shot, but yeah, no. I can barely remember the Spanish I once upon a time could read. I'm not good with languages. None of that came true. Okay. And it's disappointing. It is. But I get to pretend. I get to pretend with other people.
For
And
sure.
so I make people up who have skills that I don't have. And I enjoy it immensely. And yeah, but I had always had stories in my head, always from my earliest memories. I'd had these stories in my head. I really can't tell you other than that God's timing is always what it's supposed to be, because I can't tell you why it never occurred to me to write them down, or that that's what writers did. Like that they have stories in their head and then they write them down. I don't know why I didn't make that connection. I'm a reasonably intelligent person, and that didn't ever really click with me until I heard an interview. I saw an interview where an author was being asked about her writing, and she said, "Well, I've always had stories in my head." And I went, I have stories in my head, and I'm a good writer, and I could probably do that. How hard could it possibly be? I found out real fast. I sat down at the computer one night and got about 2 paragraphs in and realized I had no idea how to format dialogue, because it's just not something when you read, you are absorbing it, but you don't think about where does the comma go, where does the quotation mark go, all of that. But yeah, I started writing and I had the story in my head. Interestingly enough, the general gist of it, that story exists, but it has never been published, and it will never be published in its current form.
Do you still have it?
Oh, I have it.
Good.
I have every bit of it. I have a hope. I have an idea for how it might kind of get reworked, and maybe someday it will come to life. But the idea was that there are people living here in Greenville, South Carolina, where I live, who are actually secret agents, and they're believers, and they go to church, but obviously they have to go to a big church so they can kind of hide. And I was walking into church one day, and I was like, it'd be wild. I mean, there could easily be people here who are spies, and I wouldn't know, because we go to a pretty large church, and I don't know everybody. And yeah, so I started writing about them, and
I love it.
It was a disaster. It wasn't really a disaster. I shouldn't say that. When I look back on it now, I can see how many, many, many publishing mistakes were in it, and it wouldn't. It's not publishable, even if I wanted to indie publish it, not and ignore some rules. Rules are fine as long as you know when to break them.
Yeah, for
sure. Especially in writing. But it was such an interesting time in my life, the timing of everything when the Lord brought it into play. And it was a season when we were reeling. We had a lot of death in the family the year before. I had a 6-month-old, and I had this weird, my oldest was 6, my at the time youngest was 6 months old, and I was in that weird season where children where he needed a nurse right around midnight, and then he'd sleep all night. But he also I would feed him at like maybe 8:30, and then he'd sleep. He'd wake up around midnight, eat, and then he'd sleep the rest of the night. So I had this weird little pocket of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I read the first book in like 4 or 5 months, 6 months, and which is crazy to me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I had no idea what I was doing. It was also probably the most fun I've ever had writing, because there was no pressure.
Right.
I had no plans to publish it, no plans to do anything with it other than maybe let my family read it. And but yeah, funny. And the Lord again has a great sense of humor. And so I finished it, and my family of course loved it. And I say, of course, not every writer has the kind of family support that I have, and I am aware of that. It is, my family was just phenomenal. My husband, my parents, my in-laws, everybody. And yeah, so I took a few classes, went to a few conferences, had another baby. There were some gaps in the process along the way, and then sold my first book to Love Inspired Suspense in 2014. And then that book came out in 2015, and then sold a series to Revell in 2017. So they started coming out in 2018. That was my Dive Team Investigation series. And so the current series is actually my third series with Revell. I have the Dive Team Investigation series, which is what it sounds like, a law enforcement dive team. And then Defend and Protect is the Secret Service. And then the current series, Gossamer Falls, which is Never Fall Again. Downfall is a novella, and then Break My Fall is the book that releases in March. And that series is set in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And it's there's still plenty of suspense, but my romantic suspense has always leaned heavily onto the romance. And so we're really embracing that with this series.
Yeah, we love that.
It is even more romance than suspense, but still plenty of suspense, but definitely leaning into the relationships and the romance, and small town mountains, which I am a small town mountain girl. So that my family is still in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And yeah, it of course, I mean, the first book came out in March of 2024. My dates are getting swirly. It'll be interesting. I'm writing the final book in the series, and I haven't decided yet how, if any, Hurricane Helene plays into that.
Oh.
My fictional town is intentionally vague. It's in the mountains, and it's an hour from Asheville, but I never really spell out exactly where it is. And the way Helene came through North Carolina, it cut a path. But there's plenty of mountain towns outside of that path in the far, far western part of North Carolina that really weren't anywhere nearly as severely impacted as the area that was. I have mixed feelings about it. I sometimes it's easier and better for the longevity of a story to not get too much into the current events of a situation. But I don't know. I'm writing that book right now, and I don't know if I'm going to mention Helene in any way or not, but we'll see.
There could be. I mean, it's just absolutely devastating what has happened, especially because you would never think that the floods would affect mountainous regions as it did. And it's just so much. But there is always, any time that there is such devastation, there's also a lot of hope whenever it comes, from the perspective of the helpers and the people that are rescued and the people that have gotten relief. So maybe, who knows what you'll do with this story, but I'm sure you'll make it amazing.
I don't know. I'm not an outliner. I very much just kind of start writing. So I have no idea. I don't know. Sometimes people will say, I never saw that coming. And I'll be like, neither did I. It was as much a shock to me as it is to you.
That's awesome.
So who knows? We'll see.
Oh, that's fun. That is so fun. And I love too that you said like you had so much support from your family, because, and that's true. That's a really good thing. Like everybody's like, oh, your mom will love it. But some moms might not, some people's moms.
I'm sorry to say
are not that way.
I know some writers who do not have that kind of support. And I am,
unfortunately,
I am very thankful that I do. Yeah,
for sure. And then I love that you went into your series, especially like Downfall with your novella and then the prior series. So I love to hear, obviously, right, Christian romance podcast, that you are leaning into the romance relationship. But it's just funny because even like the romance books, I feel like there's always something like the suspense. There's always something that's like there's a plot there, right? So that's what's
absolutely.
so interesting about the romance. It's like the romance is usually central, right, in most of the books, and especially the books we talk about on this podcast. But there is also something else going on, whether it's in like the historical setting or a suspenseful setting. But I feel like your background as a chemical engineer, you would have some interesting perspective for a lot of different things in your books. Have you found that like, have you used a lot of like your own knowledge that you're like, oh, I know that this would be like this, especially
I
with
have.
suspense.
Some of it is intentional and some of it really isn't. And then I look back on it and go, ooh, okay. So my very first book with love inspired suspense was called Covert Justice. And that one I have um, well, she's obviously an undercover agent, but she supposedly, that's not why she's there. But it's a manufacturing plant and there is a contamination of a bottled water supply. And I worked in South Carolina's health department, environmental stuff with the water supply way long time ago. And I worked in a manufacturing facility that produced the plastic that gets made into Coke bottles and some water bottles and things like that. So very specifically, it's come into play in that book. And then I typically have, and I didn't do it on purpose, which is the part that I think is hilarious because I know some people might think I've done it on purpose. I wind up with women in STEM or STEAM roles without doing it on purpose. So in my dive team series, even though that's very heavily law enforcement related, I do have a character. Dr. Sabrina Fleming is a computer forensics and cybersecurity person. And she turned out to be such a nerdy, fun character. I adore her to the point that she manages to show up in every book ever since, somehow, except maybe the novellas. She may not be in the novellas, but she shows up everywhere else. And I didn't do that on purpose either. That was she just worked out that way. But then in the Defend and Protect series, I have again a female PhD who is in bioengineering, and she works with prosthetics. And then in the current series and in the book Break by Fall, I have a dentist who is very, science and math and people as well. And so it worked out somehow that the heroine in the second book of each series, and I probably need to break that trend because I didn't do it on purpose.
Oh, I'm sure it's working.
What is happening in my head, in my subconscious, that this is the way this is working out? But yeah, I like smart women. I think that it's important to show women who are very feminine, but also very, very intelligent. I try very hard not to write women who are, we use the too stupid to live comment in particularly in romantic suspense. Like, she shouldn't be too stupid to live. Like, she shouldn't be doing stupid things. Like, come on, don't use your brain. This is not a horror movie where you're going to run into the building with the axes and knives hanging down. No. You're going to get in trouble, obviously, because it's the book and I need you to get yourself into a mess.
Absolutely.
So that you can get out of it. But let's not be stupid about it. Let's have a real reason for getting there. And so I love having these really, really smart women. I think even for young girls, I don't know that they even fully appreciate the fact they're like, well, of course you can do anything you want to do, like be whatever you want to be. And I don't really do it on purpose, but I think that's one of those things that comes out in just the way your own personality comes out in your writing. That my heroines are always going to be highly intelligent, regardless of what their career path has been. These are smart girls who are going to expect to be treated as such, and then also, they gotta have a little marshmallow heart and love big, because I am a romance girly. My favorite motif was always hearts. I had a bedspread covered in hearts growing up, and when we were planning this new series, when my editor said, how would you feel about like really leaning harder into the romance? And I was like,
yay! Thank you.
Pick me.
Yes, we love
I'm here
that.
for it. Yes.
I'm here for it. You know what's funny is like I think that, having like the smarter women, like we all want to characterize ourselves in the story, right? There's always some part of you're living vicariously through these characters in a way. Sometimes they're characters that will make you nuts and you're like, but then they're still provoking this like emotion out of you. But you also, I feel like I identify so much with characters who make decisions based on difficult decisions, based on their values more so than not knowing better or something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like there's always that like tense. I love that tension, and it's like such a hard choice, like a rock and a hard place where both are going to be down a different path that might be problematic, especially like in the suspenseful books, there's like very, very real like threat of danger down one of these paths. So
I don't have any good option. Which
yes.
one is the least likely to get me killed?
Exactly.
Yes.
And you want to root for somebody who is decisive, like, because we all don't like to be decisive. We have to be decisive all the time in our life, and we're not. Okay. I mean,
I am the worst.
What are we going to have for dinner? I have no idea. I don't know. If we just did not have to worry about what is going to be made for dinner every day, I mean, it would take away so much stress. No, I'm just kidding. There's like people dealing with real things. I'm talking about like, making dinner, but you know what I mean? So,
oh no, we do. We are constantly processing information,
right?
Always, and it is, and of course, I don't know. It's probably partly why I like romantic suspense so much. The thing is, I say all that about these women, but I really like my men to be men.
Yeah,
I want strong men.
Yeah, for sure.
I want men who are not intimidated by these strong women,
right,
and these smart women. But I want a man who is a man, and I want to write men who are strong and protective and have those kinds of characteristics. And I think it's a very romantic suspense sometimes gives you a little more leeway there too, as far as having these men with these kinds of temperaments or whatever. And I enjoy the back and forth between the two characters and what they're doing and how they are interacting. And I think suspense also gives you that heightened emotional situation where you can make the argument that they may have fallen in love faster than maybe in real life. Although I could have told you a month in I was marrying my husband and I was 19 years old.
Yep.
So I don't really believe in love at first sight, but I do believe you can fall in love pretty quickly and know for sure who you're dealing with. I didn't marry him for 3.5 years because I was 19 and I was in college, and both sets of parents were like, y'all are not getting married till she graduates. But I knew I was going to marry him. And so I'm not, sometimes people are like, don't you think that went a little fast? And I'm like, I don't know. And I've met a lot of romance writers who have similar stories.
Oh yeah.
Where they say, I met my husband. Sometimes they really did marry them 3 months later or something like that, or they knew they were going to marry them immediately, or they got engaged really fast. And I think maybe that's just like, sometimes we can write it because we are living it. I've been happily married for 27 years. I've been with my husband for almost 31 years. And it works for me. I can believe it.
Yeah,
so
100%.
It's easy for me to write it. Yeah.
It's funny. Me and my husband actually met each other when we were young and didn't realize it. We were like 15. We used to go to this dance club. I loved like to go to dance clubs. I just love to dance. And we went to this dance club, and he was like the wallflower. Okay. He was like way off on the wall. So cute though. I remembered his beautiful blue eyes. And I was always like staring at him, and he always had a blue shirt on, and I called him my boy in blue every week because he always wore a blue shirt. And no joke, my mom, it's just so funny that she like remembers this. I remember one day we were pulling up and we were going to the club, and I said, Mom, I'm going to talk to him today, because I didn't do that. Like you said, I want a man. I want somebody to come up to me. I was very like, oh, I don't even know where I got that from. Just my parents, I guess. You want that guy to come off the wall.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I ended up going up and talking to him. And I'm so dramatic. I was like 15. I'm like, what if he's my destiny and I don't say anything? Meanwhile, he totally was. And I went up, I said hi. And then years later, nothing came of that. I mean, we didn't even, we were both like kind of shy in that way, and I remember his deep voice. And then years later, my best friend was getting married, and he was the best man. He was his brother. So he was the best man. I was the maid of honor in the wedding.
Oh my word, it's like a whole romance
Girl,
trope right there.
It's a whole trope. I mean, we got like so many tropes.
The maid of honor and the best man.
I know. The maid of honor and the best man. And we're like in our 20s, but we keep crossing these paths, and we keep like, and at that time we really liked each other. No, we weren't seeing anybody else, or he was seeing someone at that time though, but he had a girlfriend. So it never clicked. It was never good timing. But then when we finally, years after that even, got together, it was like how you said, like it wasn't love at first sight. I mean, obviously we had been crossing paths, but as soon as we got together, it was like right away. Like I knew it was like forever. I mean, we were together for like 2 weeks, and he's like, he told me he loved me, and we were like, that was it, because we just knew.
Yeah, you knew.
And it is funny because, romance writers can certainly like, I mean, we just lean into it in our own lives. Sometimes, I mean, everybody has their own story, right? Everybody has a story, but yeah, I totally feel that. It's so exciting and it's so fun. Talk a little bit about, because I know we're almost at time, but because I want to hear a little bit more about Grayson and Meredith. How did you do? Like, what are their kind of roles? Why don't you talk about their romance a little bit? No spoilers.
No, definitely no spoilers. Well, they are. So Meredith in this story, the heroes and heroines, the connection here is we have cousins. Cal is the hero of the first book, Meredith's the heroine of the second book, and then her brother Mo is the hero of the third book. And Cal, Meredith, and Mo grew up together. They've been friends. They're very close. They're within about a 10-month space of each other. And Grayson is actually Cal's best friend, which is sort of it's a cousin's best friend, but they're almost like a brother's best friend kind of situation.
Yeah.
And she has liked him from the beginning, first time she saw him, like, oh, he's gorgeous. And he was so not interested, or at least she didn't think he was interested. And so he's had a lot of tragedy in his past and has pretty much sworn off women in general, where she's the town princess and everybody loves her. But she really wants this guy to come after her. She wants him to choose to love her. She feels like all the people in her world love her because they kind of have to. Not that they don't love her, but their family, their friends, their people she's grown up with. She really wants this guy to really make an effort and want to be with her. And of course, I had a lot of fun with him because I do have a whole dating situation where he's trying to win her back after he really messes up. He messes up more than just about anybody I've ever written.
Oh, that rough. Sounds fun.
I was like, come on, Gray, don't do this to me.
Don't do it, Gray.
Don't do it. And then, but I had fun. The making up was fun. It's certainly a lot of fun. And they are, I love them. I think they're a fun couple and a fun, just a different way of looking at the romance, because the things that are stopping them are 100% in their own minds. Like there's really not, they live in the same town. They both plan to live in the same town forever. There's really no real conflict from that perspective, but their past, and particularly Gray, has so much baggage that it is something he has to overcome and has to give it to the Lord and trust that the Lord's got this and the Lord's in control, and that his attempt to control his life by controlling all these things is not going to work. So it's tricky too, because you want that romantic conflict to be real. There needs to be a real reason these people can't get together. I don't like circumstantial stuff. And so that was tricky when I was writing that, because I was like, well, there's very few reasons for them not to get together.
Right.
Like, it's pretty obvious here. But his past is a real thing, and it is a real thing that he has to give to the Lord and be willing to trust again and try again in a way that and then of course has to fix it with Meredith because he's messed it up so bad. And so I had a lot of fun with these two. They are he is the police chief in Gossamer Falls. She's the town dentist. That's also cracking me up because I know so many people hate going to the dentist, and I have several friends who are dentists.
Oh,
And so I hit them up for information and talked to them about dentistry, and even that, it's a whole random thing. Apparently, I did not know this. Dentists have a very, very, very high suicide rate.
oh.
There's apparently a lot of mental health issues that are related to that sometimes, and a part of it may be because nobody wants to go see the
Maybe, yeah, and I
dentist.
don't understand
I
that
mean,
fear
it's
really. I mean, I
I
guess I
don't
kinda do a little bit, but I
I
don't but
kind of do, but
it doesn't bother
I
me.
did want to kind of maybe let's have a friendly dentist that everybody could love, and
Yeah.
Meredith's definitely that bubbly, fun personality. Um, and she's the town princess. She grew up in this town. She moved back home, and then Grayson's the kind of former Marine, although there's never really a former Marine,
I know.
and police chief, hard life, grew up in Chicago, and just a completely different uh, background,
Mhm.
and their path's a little different from anybody else's I've written, but I enjoyed it. They were fun to write, and yeah, I think they are going to be. I hope. I'm always amazed. Everybody has a different take. Different couples. I always think it's fun to hear somebody like of all the couples, who's your favorite couple? And there's a couple that are more universally favored, but then inevitably somebody will be like, no, no, this is my favorite couple. And I think this is going to be that for a few people. I think it'll be interesting to see. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah, especially because it's just so real about the barriers being more internal because
Yeah,
we do that, right? Like we are always
we
like
do.
questioning ourselves and thinking that, you are your past, that you can't be there's things that you've done you cannot be forgiven. And Jesus doesn't work like that. It's
No,
not about our
thank
worth.
goodness.
I know, thank God, really,
Hmm.
because my goodness. And it's a hard lesson to learn, especially, and a
It
lot of
is.
times you learn it when you're starting to see the good in someone else and you want them to see themselves how you see them and vice versa, so sometimes that romance, especially because it's supposed to really emulate our relationship with the Lord, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of like the
absolutely.
picture of it. um but yeah, I love it. I can't wait to read it. Oh, it sounds awesome. I can't believe that about Dennis. That's really sad. That's really
I know, and
sad.
I asked one of my friends specifically. We went to lunch, and I said, "Why? Why is this?"
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know. She said, it is actually a very, she has actually had to retire, and she's not much older than me, because of the work with your hands. It's so very,
Oh,
she's had
tedious.
issues with her hands, like
Mm.
arthritis and joint issues with her hands. And apparently that comes into play. And then it is very meticulous. And then of course there are the fact that people like
The
you as a
fear.
person,
Yeah.
but there's so much fear. And yeah, I was like, is this real? Because I'm about to write a story that, not that that's not the part of it, but she's like, no, it's a real thing. It is
Mm.
a real piece of it. So
Ah.
yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
Next time at my dentist, I'm gonna be like, "Hey, I appreciate you.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm
Yes.
happy
Give the
that you're
dentist some
here."
love. That's
Yes,
right. We need to love on our
that's
dentists.
our
Yes.
CTA right now. Give some
There you
dentists
go. That's
give
right.
some
Show
dentists
them
some
some
love,
love.
please. Just share the love. That's like one of the things that I'll say at the end of the episodes all the time. Share the love because everybody
Absolutely.
needs it, right? Before we go, I'd love to hear if there was a particular verse that really helped you just throughout your journey. It's hard. It's hard to do a lot of these things. It takes a lot of courage, especially stepping out from your career already and following God's call. Was there a verse that really kind of stuck with you or even stuck with your characters?
So I have a few, but one that I have it on a little board up over my desk. I think I may even have it. Oh yeah, it's back behind me over there. I have it in several places on the
Oh,
walls. Isaiah 41:13.
oh,
For I, the Lord your God, hold your right hand. It is I who say to you, fear not, because I am the one who helps you. And that verse, when I first started writing for Rebel, I was completely overwhelmed and so stressed out. And
mm,
also thinking this was, uh, this would have been like 2018, probably. I was not sure if I could finish the book I was writing. I didn't imagine how I could possibly keep doing this. And I felt like God gave me this image, and I homeschool my boys. And one of the things, when you're teaching a child how to write, it's not unusual. We do this even with little toddlers. We come up behind them, we put our arms around them, we hold their hand and help them grasp the pencil or the crayon or
Mm.
whatever, and show them how to do it. And I felt like the Lord was like, look, I've got you. I am the one who helps you. I am holding your right hand. Don't be afraid. And sometimes when I am really, 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 I have chills right now.
Mm.
When I'm just so stressed, sometimes I will think about this, and I will just picture. I mean, I don't do much writing by hand really, but when I'm sitting here at the computer, and I'll just have that vision of God behind me, holding my hands, giving me the words He wants me to say. And I'm always amazed at what He does with these stories. And I just try to remind myself that, kind of that preaching the gospel to myself, that He is the God who goes after the one. The one lost sheep, the one coin, whatever. He sees that one that is missing or hurting, and I pray for that one when I'm writing, that maybe this will be something that God can use. I get a lot of it's hard. I cry and pray
Mhm.
over every book at some point. I'm always in a complete disaster at some point, going, God, I can't do this.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, I also get a lot of enjoyment and a lot of fun. I get to do things like this, and I get to talk to readers, and there's so much joy in it for me. But I try to pray that, I don't know what God's going to do with it down the road, or what phrase, or how He's going to use it, and that, um, even if it's only one person, that whatever He's doing will bless them, will encourage them, will draw them closer to Him. And I think that is, we kind of, the mental image of Him, kind of like the Holy Spirit hovering, and not that my words are inspired, but just that He gives the stories. And there's a lot of fear, because, people, readers are lovely in general, but people can be mean. Do you know, like, as far as
Yeah.
people don't
Yeah.
always appreciate, I'm fine with the fact that, my writing's not going to be for everybody. That is completely okay,
Right.
because there's lots of writers out there. Find the writer that works for you. But I can't read my reviews. I can't go anywhere near them, and most of them are lovely, but I just can't. That's not healthy for me. And that fear of man can really come into play as well. And just having to remind myself that's not why I'm doing it. And whatever God wants to do with it down the road is His decision. And I just need to be obedient to Him. So yeah, that's my main verse right there.
I love it. It's beautiful. And just thank you so much for sharing your heart about it too, because it's really hard. And it's easy to be afraid, and it's easy to forget. And I love that picture of Him helping us. What a wonderful
Yeah.
way to say that, because like how a toddler, like how you're helping,
Hmm.
especially for mothers out there that can totally identify with that, parents, I should say. Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Lynn. I mean, I just love how He has guided you, and it really is a ministry. And like you said, he goes after the one. So even if your words in that were inspired by Him, that's the beauty about co-creating with God within these beautiful Christian
Yes.
stories, is that there's a different layer of story there. There's a different way that He touches people's hearts with it, and it's just such a blessing to be part of it in any way. And I just love that you have the courage to follow that call even whenever it's really hard, and I just love it.
Thank you.
So we are almost at time, but why don't you let our listeners and readers know where they can connect with you, especially because you have a lot of fun stuff with your newsletter, and you do free gifts and things like that. So what's the best place that they can find you, find your wonderful books, and connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. So the best place is, my website is lynnhblackburn.com. And then, you can sign up for my newsletter there. I do have a free novella right now that is a tie-in between my dive team series and my Secret Service series. It's sort of, I call it Dive Team Investigations 3.5 and Defend and Protect 0.5. It falls in between the two. And that's completely free. And then there's also some freebies that go along, everything from recipes that go along with the dive team series, all the way to, there's some letters back and forth between Gil and Ivy. If you've read Malicious Intent, there's lots of free stuff. So, that's the best way. On social media, I'm mostly active on Facebook and Instagram. at Lynn H Blackburn. I do have a Twitter X account, but I'm not on it as much, but it's there. And then in 2025, I am going to be joining with some other authors to make sure that every newsletter has a freebie from somebody else as well. So I'll have my
nice.
freebies that are always available to my subscribers, but I'm going to be introducing my readers to other authors who also have free novellas, free books, free stories in their newsletters and things like that, just to help spread the love, because I can only write so fast and most readers read a lot faster than I can write. So try to introduce them to some new authors as well.
That's wonderful. I love that so much. I will definitely link to your website and everything in the show
Awesome.
notes. And so
Great.
make sure you check out Lynn's site and you connect with her. And that is so fun. I love that you give those gifts and just, it's always nice to get new to you authors. That's the whole purpose
sure.
of this podcast, is sharing
Yes.
sharing the love, absolutely. Connecting readers with authors. It's wonderful. I love it. Thank you so much, Lynn. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you. I know I could chat with you longer, but I want to be respectful of your time. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This has been fantastic.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with one book lover like yourself. We love to bless as many people as we can with exclusive interviews and, of course, great books. Each month, we host a themed book giveaway where you can win a selection of Christian romance novels and some extra goodies, too. This month's theme is International Love. We're giving away 5 heartwarming Christian romance books filled with love, second chances, and faith, set in breathtaking locations like Ireland, Scotland, France, and beyond. Whether you're listening right as this episode comes out or in the future and don't want to miss out on the giveaway, no worries. You'll find the link to the current giveaway on our website, christianromancepodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, keep your faith, share the love, and happy reading.